Hi everybody, what's brewing? I'm Mike Biana and this is Coffee Talk. If you've ever been to a city commission meeting, you will see our next guest. As a matter of fact, he's been on the show before, but so much has changed since then that we wanted to bring him back. Joining me at the coffee table today, of course, is City Attorney for the City of Coral Gables, Craig Leen. Mr. City Attorney, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a true pleasure. It's good to be back.
It's really good to have you. Now, last time we had a very healthy conversation about what it is that your office does. Not to rehash any points, of course. What is it that you've done since that time you were last on our show?
Well, we've continued to be very focused on our residential areas in Coral Gables and trying to enhance them. Now, obviously, the City Commission and the City Manager, there's a lot of policies that they adopt to do that, but my office also has a part in that as well.
Right.
So last time I spoke to you a little bit about the squatters ordinance, how we're enforcing that vigorously to make sure there's not squatters in Coral Gables. I talked to you a little bit about the abandoned property ordinance and how we're making sure that banks fix up abandoned properties. And what I can tell you is we've only enhanced that since the last time we spoke. There are so many properties now that look beautiful, aesthetically beautiful, just like Coral Gables expects. Because of those efforts that we took, and we continue those efforts.
I've seen some of those properties that you mentioned.
And in addition, we have new things that we're doing to try to even further help with that effort. One thing, for example, is the Construction Regulation Board.
Okay.
My office drafted legislation, which the Commission was very supportive of, and the City Manager, which allows now for contractors who do work without a permit or who violate the zoning code to be prosecuted by my office with a fine that would be provided to them. The reason why we did that was because the idea here is if you hire a contractor, you should be able to rely on them. And they should tell you exactly what they need to do, and they should follow the Coral Gables Code. So I think that this is really great because now, instead of focusing on the resident, which we still do. Each resident has a responsibility to follow the law. But to the extent those residents get taken advantage of or exploited sometimes, now we can focus on the contractor and make sure that they get fined and that they fix what they've done.
That's interesting. Now, how did you coming up with this legislation? Was there something that you saw inherently within the city that led you to focus on this?
Well, it's interesting because it first came up because we wanted an unsafe structures ordinance. And what that means is, remember I told you about abandoned properties last time?
Yes.
Well, some of these properties are deteriorating and they need to be demolished. And then there'll be an open space there, and that's better for that neighborhood to not have a derelict or deteriorating building right there where you could have squatters, people can come into. So first we started with that, and we made the Construction Regulation Board an unsafe structures board. So we go right to them if we needed to get a demolition order. That got me thinking, well, look, they already have this authority over these unsafe structures, but what about safe structures, structures where people live, but a contractor comes in and does work without a permit or violates our zoning code? And of course, that's not the same thing as an abandoned property. That's right at the beginning, but those are the types of things that can cause a lot of harm to our residents and can also lead to structures becoming derelict or becoming caught up in code enforcement. And we thought, why don't we start at the beginning and start really doing more enforcement there? So that's one thing I'm very proud of.
Now, in terms of enforcement, what kind of prosecution are we looking at for these contractors?
So what would happen is they would be brought before the board. My office would prosecute it, which means that basically we would show that they did work without a permit, similar to what code enforcement does, and then they would get a fine and they would be ordered to fix the work or basically get a permit. So I think those sort of things are good. I think they're helpful to our residents. Another thing that we're doing is we're taking a look at a lot of the codes and how they affect our residential communities and trying to adopt new laws that protect our residential communities. So a couple that we've done is we've redone our sign code so that it's very clear that everyone in Coral Gables can have one sign year-round, and during elections they can have bonus signs so that they can express themselves. But it's done in a way that's regulated, in a content-neutral way. I'm very proud of our new sign code. We worked very hard on it, and there was a new Supreme Court precedent that we were seeking to follow, which is what we did. So we did a new sign code. We also did something called a guardhouse ordinance. What the guardhouse ordinance does is it establishes that between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., if you drive up to a guardhouse in Coral Gables, the driver has a duty to open the window and state the destination. Now, the guardhouse operator can't stop the person from continuing to drive in But what we think is that most people will open their window and state their destination, and we do believe that that will help lead to a reduction in crime and also omnipresence, where you can't just drive into a neighborhood and drive around and basically look at different houses to see if someone's there or not in the middle of the night when you have no reason to be there. And so that's the purpose of that sort of ordinance. And in fact, you're going to be seeing signs in front of those guardhouses that say that.
I've been to the commission meetings where these two ordinances have been discussed. And so what I want to know is how they came about, one, with the signs, and two, with the guardhouse, and what led to the decision to pursue those things?
Well, the commission gave a directive to my office to try to find different ways to limit crime and to fight crime. A number of other ordinances were passed as well. There was an ordinance which basically made it illegal in Coral Gables to do serial car burglary, which was already illegal under state law, but we provided enhanced penalties and have a specific ordinance directed to that. Another ordinance that we did was a picketing ordinance. Coral Gables is strongly in favor of the First Amendment. But one thing that we made sure to do, and it was completely consistent with a U.S. Supreme Court precedent which said that we could do this, the Frisbee case, is that we said you can't just stand in front of someone's house, though, and picket a specific house.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean you can't walk on sidewalks at reasonable times and reasonable hours and make your view known. And it doesn't mean that the city won't give you an alternative area to make your views known, but you can't just be in front of someone's house doing that. And we had occasions where that had happened, and that can cause someone who's a captive in their own house feeling very uncomfortable in a residential area. And the Supreme Court has said that is not what the First Amendment is about. It's about getting your views out. So
not attacking a person within their own home.
Yeah, so we have a host of ordinances, probably 10, I would think, over the past 2 or 3 years, that are directed at increasing the quality of life of our residential neighborhoods. And we are vigorously enforcing them.
It seems to me that the common denominator here is the safety and the comfort of Coral Gables residents. A lot of the ordinances that you're working on right now.
Definitely. That is a principal purpose of my office, certainly of the city of Coral Gables. Another thing that we're doing, I think that's very interesting, is that we speak on behalf of our residents and our homeowners associations to other government entities. We did that with the school board with the controlled choice issue. And we ended up working with the school board to eliminate controlled choice in Coral Gables. What controlled choice is, it used to be before we took this initiative that if you wanted to go to a public school in Coral Gables, you had to go through a lottery system. And now you have a designated home school. So that's very helpful for our residents because they know when they move into an area where they're going to go to school.
And
so
they that brings consistency. You know exactly where you're going to be.
And we think so we worked with our residents and the school board to get that done. With the county, we've had a couple cases that have come up where the county and our homeowners association have not been getting along. You know, they have a difference of opinion, and we've intervened or gotten involved to try to help our homeowners association with the county. One of those cases turned out very well for Deering Bay, one of our homeowners associations. And one we're doing right now with the McFarland Homestead and Golden Gate area of Coral Gables, I think that will turn out well also.
Mr. City Attorney, these are some things that you have done in the past, some things that you're working on. I know you've got a lot on your plate. You're talking about 10-some ordinances that you're working on right now. But if there was something that you wanted to bring to light here within the city, what is something that you might want to bring to the table?
Well, you know, one thing, and we talked a little bit about this last time, that I think is unique about my office, but which I think is really important, and it's something actually I talk a lot to other city attorneys about, is that when we give opinions, we do it publicly. We put it on a website. Residents can look at that, and they know that they're not going to, it's not just an opinion for one person, or just one developer, or one issue, but it applies to everybody. And I think that's very important. You know, that's a key aspect of Coral Gables. We want to treat all of our residents equally. We also are very careful about precedents. You know, we want to make sure that we're treating people fairly. I hear that all the time in City Hall. And so one thing is, if a resident feels like they're not being treated fairly, a special thing about Coral Gables is you can come and you can speak to each of your commissioners. You can speak to the mayor of Coral Gables. You can speak to the city attorney and city manager all in one day. You can come see each of us. You can't see all the commissioners at once because of the Sunshine Law, but you can speak to them each individually. And what ends up happening is that it gives people a real sense of community and the ability to affect their government.
Right.
And so if you ever feel like you're being treated unfairly, you should come. Come to the city attorney's office. Come speak with me or my deputy city attorney or assistant city attorney, and we'll try to help you. We'll do our best. You're technically not our client. We don't represent you in that way, but you are our constituent, just because we work for the commission and for the city. So we will try to help you.
Right.
And put you in contact with the appropriate person.
Are there any specific instances, any specific cases in which you've helped out a neighborhood?
Yes, in fact, there's one I can think of right away, and it just happened. On Lisbon Street, there is an area where there's a very large oak tree. My understanding is it's the oldest oak tree in Coral Gables.
Wow.
Well over 100 years old. And it's beautiful. And one of the issues that came up was a developer wanted to build a house that would be right next to the tree, and there was a concern that it would affect the tree. And this actually went to the commission a few times, and we worked with the developer, and we ended up splitting the lot into multiple lots so that they could have a very small house next to the oak tree.
Sure.
In the end, though, in talking to them about it, we began to think, you know what? We obviously want to save this oak tree, and it's important to the neighborhood. Why don't we look at another way? And my office was involved, the city manager's office was involved, the commissioners were very involved, and I know Commissioner Lago was actually designated by the commission to work with us on this specifically. And what ended up happening was we ended up purchasing the lot. We worked out, and there was a legal component and a policy component, but what happened was we worked out an agreement whereby the developer could have one house. They would build one house, and then the rest would be basically purchased by the city for a park. Wow. And this tree would be preserved for all time. And what was interesting about it was, I think in a lot of cities, that situation where there was a developer coming in wanting to build houses who had property rights, and residents who were very concerned about this tree, a lot of times that would have led to litigation. A lawsuit that would have cost the city a lot of money, would have led to a lot of bad will, probably. Not that you want bad will, but what ends up happening is in litigation, it tends to, people are expending a lot of money, people are upset with each other. Right. The neighborhood may be upset. Obviously we want to preserve this tree. So instead of that, what we got was a beautiful park and a beautiful tree. And that showed the creative thinking of Coral Gables and how we act with goodwill. We're always trying to find a way to solve the matter, and that's a big part of my department. My department's goal is to try to find a way for the commission to do the right thing. Our commission wants to do the right thing. Our city manager wants to do the right thing. Our goal is to find the way to do that in a legal way. So, very proud of that.
Yes, think positively and think outside the box.
Exactly. And I think that the best lawyers do that. They're always thinking outside the box. They're always looking out for the best interests of the city in the long term, the enlightened best interests of the city and how to achieve that. And to give those tools to the commissioner and to the city manager so they can make it happen. They decide what to do, but we help them decide how to do it and how to get there in a way that doesn't hurt people and that benefits the city.
Mr. City Attorney, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a true pleasure to be here as always.
Happy to have you and hope to have you back soon.
I'm looking forward to it. I always like coming here.
And that'll do it for this edition of Coffee Talk. Remember to stay tuned on our Facebook page at facebook.com/City of Coral Gables and on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Coral Gables TV. I'm Mike Biana. Thanks for watching and stay beautiful, Coral Gables.